Representation has been a big topic when it comes to media for almost a decade now, and it's usually looked upon negatively, and I can totally see why. I am all for representation, but only if done correctly, and not just because we need to tick a checkbox. Why is a character a certain gender, certain sexuality, a certain race, or have some kind of disability? This is an important question, because by changing just one of those aspects of the character, it can completely change how they would operate inside the world of the story. When done correctly, we can have some of the best characters to have hit the entertainment media, but sadly, more often than not, writers never do more than just leaving them as a blank slate. I cannot speak in terms of skin color because I am a white dude, or as white as my Greek and Bulgarian's genetics allow me to be. I cannot speak in terms of sexuality because I am straight, or at the very least, as straight as my Greek and Bulgarian genetics allow me to be. But what I can talk about is characters with disabilities. I have this little thing called arthritis, which, long story short, pretty much had made it almost impossible for me to walk on my own for a majority of my life. So, how are wheelchair-bound people, like me, depicted in media? How does the character manage to live in a world without probably the most important physical ability a human possesses? How do they cope? How do they strive? I would love to tell you, but considering how 90% of characters with faulty legs are either the smartest people in the world who work from the shadows, or people with superpowers that rely on things that don't require their legs, I really cannot tell you. It's either that or comedy relief. As fun as Lester might be, as cool of a character Professor X is, their disability isn't exactly something of concern most of the time, if at all. They might have the disability, but the stories never delve into what it actually feels to have such a detriment to your life in a serious way. Funnily enough, one of the few to do it right is Katawa Shoujo, a dating visual novel created by 4chaners of all people. The other one I discovered years later was the seventh protagonist of Hirohiko Araki's work JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the tale of Johnny Joestar, the story of revival, a story of starting to walk again, and a story that came to be from one fateful encounter. What will you do if you get an opportunity to change your life? Will you suffer for it? And most importantly, would you be willing to give it up for someone else? Those are some of the questions Johnny has to face during his journey if he wishes to return what he once lost. When you rip off all the nail spinning, all the dinosaur transformations and dimension hopping presidents, you are left with a story of a man having a once in a lifetime chance to start living again. A single accidental touch to a spinning ball not only gave life to Johnny's lifeless legs for a second, but it also gave life to hope. Hope that there actually may be a cure for his predicament. A cure that is slowly slipping away unless he acts fast. But how could he chase after it when the mere act on getting on top of a horse is impossible? Trampled by hooves, pierced by fences, dragged around on the ground. Does Johnny even think of giving up? No, he finds a roundabout way of doing it by utilizing his upper body to get himself over the horse's back, making him that much closer to figuring out Gyro's secret technique, a chance he is unwilling to slip past him. You either start doing something now or forget getting up from the wheelchair, were the words told to a 13-year-old Jurginsta. Just a year prior, a starry-eyed, optimistic 12-year-old Jurginsta immediately agreed to go under operation on my legs, only for it to make it even worse, pretty much removing any movement, as minimal as it was, I had previously in my legs, sealing my fate to be bound to a wheelchair. I fell into a serious depression. I completely abandoned my rehabilitations, thinking there would be no point, that it's just a waste of time, that this would just be my life from now on, until that fateful day with the doctor. Even though the doctor's words weren't my main motivator that made me change my life, they were the start. Just like how hope blossomed inside Johnny after a single touch, that sentence the doctor said was the first spark to my revival. I had a choice to make: drown in self-pity, ignoring the warnings, or pull myself together and start doing something about it, no matter how difficult, whilst I still had the chance. Well, considering how I always talk in the past tense when mentioning my wheelchair days, I think you know which path I chose. Moving forward a bit in the story, Johnny is faced with a nightmarish challenge. Gyro has been abducted, both of their horses as well, and Johnny is left on the ground in the middle of the desert. Using arguably the most creative way a crippled character has used their powers to move around with, that Araki never used again for some reason, Johnny hides himself. Starting to panic, Gyro is gone, the horses are gone, the enemy is nowhere to be seen, and best of all, a mummy's hand is stuck inside of him. But in the midst of everything, a miracle happens. His feet and toes move for the first time in God knows how long, thanks to the power of that mummy. For the first time since that fateful encounter with Gyro, Johnny's legs once again moved on their own, rejuvenating his confidence. But it won't be long before he is tested once again. Reaching the hideout and being caught in a deadly trap, Johnny has a decision to make. Does he let Gyro die, keeping the one thing that has the ability of returning life to his legs, or does he give the mummy up, saving his friend but losing the one thing he has always wanted after getting it no more than 10 minutes ago? In the end, through tears, he gives up the mummy hand, deeming Gyro's life as more important than his own happiness. What makes his decision even more powerful is the fact that Johnny does not want to give the hand away at first. After so many long years, he finally sees the light in the tunnel, and now he has to give it up? Johnny is not someone like Jonathan. He is selfish, but even he couldn't let another person die when no other options were left. Although he didn't really lose it for long, it still makes me wonder what I would do in such a position. 2 years of non-stop daily rehabilitations and weekly trips to the hospital was what I needed to make my first movements with my legs. It wasn't a big step or even a small move forward. It was quite literally my leg being able to slide across the floor 2 inches forward. As minuscule as it was, I could not have been any happier at that moment. It signaled the beginning of the end of this journey. I struggled so much to get to this point. I sacrificed so much to achieve this. So I wonder, would I have been able to give it all away if it meant someone dear to me gets to live? The sheer fact that the answer is not an immediate yes, especially in later stages of your progression, is quite realistic when it comes to Johnny. Nails are an interesting choice for a weapon to give your crippled character. Outside of just being plain cool, it gives the character a natural disadvantage by giving them only 10 chances to win. It also gives the natural progression of showing how the character is slowly gaining his legs back by the evolution of his nails. At first, Johnny has only 10 shots, 10 chances to win or die. Then he gets additional 10 when his legs start to move a bit, in the form of his toenails. Next, his nails become similar to homing missiles, making his 10 chances a lot more certain to hit their mark. With him managing to get up on his feet for a second, his nails allow him to transfer himself between spaces, giving him a chance to escape even when he has fallen off his horse, something that would have been a death sentence before. And finally, a culmination of everything from the past, resulting in him finally being able to walk. With every act, Johnny evolves. With every new ability he gets, his chances for success get better. Things that once seemed impossible now are within reach. The way forward is harsh, but with each hurdle that you overcome, the horizons of what is possible expands as well. With every little step I made, a door opened for further improvement. Me being able to stand on my feet gave me the chance to start moving. With me moving my leg an inch forward gave me the chance to start making steps. Making steps gave me the chance to go up and down stairs, and so on. On the starting line, you truly have to fight tooth and nail, using everything in your disposal carefully. A day wasted could be disastrous. My legs required daily rehabilitations. They were so weak that I couldn't even feel them after having to lie down in a cast and then stay in a wheelchair for around 2 years. My brain quite literally forgot how to use them. So after a year of rehab, I managed to move my first inch forward, and from there everything became easier. The daily rehabs became 5 times a week. Then when I started to walk on my own a bit, they became only twice a week. I had only a few chances at the start. If I didn't play my cards correctly, I would have probably been stuck in the wheelchair for the rest of my life. But with each step forward, with each evolution, my challenges became easier, not because of their nature, but because of the growth I have experienced throughout my journey.
生きるとか死ぬとか、誰が正義で誰が悪だなんてどうでもいい。僕はまだマイナスなんだ。ゼロに向かっていきたい。
Johnny has undoubtedly made significant progress towards fixing his legs. It is night and day from where he was to where he is now, but that does not matter. The fact that he is so close, so extremely close to getting his ability to walk back, has made him blind. He only needs to get the corpse, he only needs to finish this final hurdle, and he would finally be at a zero. Once you reach the final 10 meters to the finish line, everything that has come before seems so insignificant in comparison. It's a feeling I'm all too familiar with. I managed to stand up, to move my legs a bit, to go up and down stairs, yet it didn't matter because I still needed to reach my 0 point. I still needed to walk, and I was so painfully close to actually doing so. Every achievement, every step forward that I have ever made did not matter. All my struggling, all my work will finally be rewarded if I manage this one final push. Surely, once it happens, it would all be worth it. The euphoria I would feel would be like no other. It would be the greatest feeling I would ever feel in my entire life. I always imagined it'd be a little more dramatic, but it's like the moon becoming full. The thing itself is kinda unconcerned about it. This singular line was the whole reason why I fell in love with Johnny as a character, why now I respect Araki as a writer even more than I did before, and why I even felt the need to do this video. I have seen multiple people, some of which are some close friends of mine, that feel that this moment is unsatisfying, like it happened out of nowhere or too suddenly. But for me, for someone who has went on a similar journey, this one line could not have been any more true. It's such a weird, specific feeling that I truly do not know how to describe. Me returning my ability to walk wasn't grand, it wasn't the life-altering experience I always thought it would be. It just happened as the natural progression to all of my struggles along the way. Obviously real life isn't a manga, I still need to use crutches for long distance travel, but I still managed to get up from my wheelchair and move on my own, something in the start of my journey I thought would be impossible. The journey and rebirth of Johnny Joestar is a really intimate depiction of the struggle one might experience when faced with the impossible, the acceptance of your situation, deciding that your fate has been already sealed, the spark of hope that gets ignited in you after getting that one singular chance to turn everything around, the joy that comes from getting the first movement, the desperation of feeling like you have not achieved anything, the determination of passing that final step, and finally the rebirth you experience after managing to walk freely on your own. But all of this is not the only reason why I believe Johnny to be such a great character and a perfect representation for disabled people. Johnny is an actual character and not just a stereotype. He is a character that happens to be disabled. Johnny is selfish, snarky, sometimes he acts like a jackass, yet still shows compassion towards those around him, especially Gyro. In short, he's incredibly human. As he himself tells us at the start and end of the story, his rebirth is not purely physical, but a symbolic one as well. He starts the journey with nothing, less than nothing, lost of all hope. And yet, just because he was at the right place, at the right time, he managed to find hope. And he didn't let go of it for a single second. He laughed and he cried. He suffered and he overcame. His journey gave him back his life in the form of his legs being able to move, and in him being a changed man, a grateful man, one completely opposite to the one he was at the start. And of course, we cannot forget how the others treat him throughout the journey. The people around him do not demean him, nor look at him differently because of his disability. Better yet, they let him deal with things on his own. Yeah, Gyro will take him and run if the situation is dire and have no time to spare, but most of the time they let Johnny save himself, not because they hate him, but because they believe in him and his abilities. Gyro had the power and knowledge to fix Johnny's problems from pretty much the very beginning, but instead he was there to only push him forward, give him advice advice from time to time and let him grow on his own. This means more to people like me than empty sympathy, pity and handouts. I feel like I was able to connect with Johnny so much more because I had already finished my journey years ago. Since I had already been through this, I could see and relate a lot more clearly to the character in front of me, and that's ignoring all the other aspects like his trauma, relationships with different characters and slow shift of his personality throughout the race, which truly amazes me how someone who, as far as I know, aside from his immortality, has no disabilities, yet Araki was one of the few writers that had made me feel like he has understood me, like he has lived in my shoes even though he hasn't, but that just shows his skills in writing realistic characters. He has already made hundreds of different and brilliant male characters, made arguably the greatest female lead character and some amazing female side characters, so him being able to portray a disabled man should not take me by surprise. Honestly, I should have known that this character would be special since the very second chapter of the story by this single panel.